Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Amonkhet Remastered and the new cards to Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation. Now, over the past 3 days, I have been doing videos covering every single spoiler that has come out, and I just give you my thoughts on how they're going to be in fact impactful and historic, what I think about it as a limited set, all of that. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the cards that are newly introduced into the Amonkhet block. That does not mean that they are new cards. They are all reprints, but they are not originally from Amonkhet or Hour of Devastation. And what they did is they took 2 cards of every color, and then 2 cards that were artifact / multicolor, and they took, so there's 2 new white cards that were not in either Amonkhet or Hour of Devastation, but were in a past set, and those have been introduced into Amonkhet with an Amonkhet new themed art. And I'm going to go over all of those new cards. Now, before I can do that, I want to talk about this whole concept, just as a whole. So I've seen a lot of people get really upset about this. I know, first off, a lot of people love Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation draft, and so a lot of people are worried that this will not be as fun. First off, they're combining the 2 sets, and I think that's actually probably a good thing. Another common complaint I see is that, well, if we're going to do Pioneer, why not add all of the cards? Because Pioneer, even that one random common that sees no play, is technically illegal. And I think what people aren't getting right now is that it's more important to get the at this point, I think it's more important to get Historic to be close to Pioneer, and then eventually get that full Pioneer support. I just think that's much more important right now, to take Historic and make it close to Pioneer. And then maybe they can add in all those other cards slowly into the game just through other means. So I think remastering sets and maybe combining them is actually a good way to go. Now, there are cards like Regal Carcel that are not being added that actually could be relevant. And I am doing a video soon covering all the cards that are not in the spoilers. I believe that's coming out tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that one. But today we're talking about all the cards that are newly introduced. And again, people are upset because, well, what happens when you get to the set? What if you added something from Innistrad? What happens when we get to Innistrad Remastered? Also, a lot of people want to know, are they doing more remastered, like Innistrad Remastered, or so on and so forth? Are they going to go backwards in time? Are they going to just skip around a little bit? And that's all questions I think they do need to answer. I think personally that the remastered sets are a good idea. I'd rather get Historic, like I said before, feeling like Pioneer rather than being the exact same format as Pioneer until eventually they do separate. So yes, why don't we break down all of the new cards? So first, we have Rest in Peace. It's 1 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards. If a card or token would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So essentially, this is the Leyline of the Void, which just exiles anything that enters the graveyard, but it also, when it ETBs, exiles all cards from all graveyards. So it's slightly better, but it also can't enter the battlefield for free. So there's it is very different, but also it's the same kind of effect. This is definitely a sideboard card. I don't know if it would ever make sense to really throw this in a deck unless your deck really cares about the exile zone. Like if you had Ashiok in your deck, the new one from Theros, you might throw this in your deck. Of course, you might throw Leyline of the Void in before that because it is within Ashiok's colors, but that's not the point. The point is, this is an interesting card to help deal with some of the graveyard problems that we are facing in Historic, and I think, honestly, I think that all of these cards that they added were going to be part of like a Historic Anthology 4, and then they realized, wait a second, we don't have a month where we can release that. Think about it. Amonkhet Remastered this month. Zendikar Rising is next month. That only leaves a couple months to then we also have Pioneer Masters and probably some other things we don't know about yet. So that'll be definitely interesting to see. But I think that they may have taken a Historic Anthology 4 and kind of just pushed it into Amonkhet a little bit. Maybe that was the idea. Maybe this was the plan all along. I'm not sure at this point, but I think this is a good inclusion. It's not going to break Historic, and doesn't feel out of place in Amonkhet either. So I think this was a good choice. Next, we have Wrath of God, 4 cost, white sorcery, destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. Now this is something that I do think will have an effect on Historic. I mean, why run Shattered the Sky when you can just run Wrath of God? Honestly, Wrath of God is one of the more famous board wipes, and I think it makes sense from an Amonkhet perspective. So again, fitting it within the lore, it makes a lot of sense. It also feels like one of those cards that, yes, it does impact the format, but it doesn't define it. I mean, right now we have Shatter the Sky. This is just a slightly better version of that card, and maybe not. Maybe some decks that like to run lots of big creatures will prefer Shatter the Sky because, well, there's a chance your opponent doesn't get to draw a card and you do. I don't know. I just think that this will see some impact, and it's also, by the way, I know I haven't, white's the first one in Wooburg, so I have to talk about it first, but white is the only color to not get a mythic, which is kind of interesting to see. Makes me think if maybe they changed it up last second. I don't know, I just think Wrath of God feels like a very historic anthology-y card, and there are a couple cards that also feel like that. But next we have Jace, Unraveler of Secrets, and this one is very weird. It's a 5-cost blue legendary planeswalker Jace, comes out with 5 loyalty. You can +1 to scry 1, then draw a card, so +1 to opt, -2 to unsummon, so return target creature to its owner's hand, and -8 to get you get an emblem with whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn, counter that spell. So yeah, you get you essentially not win the game, but you are going to be gaining so much value over your opponent once you get that -8. You basically win the game. Now, this is so weird. Why pick a random Jace from a random set? And I know they said they wanted to do, characters that were in the story but didn't get cards. Cool, but why this Jace? Why Innistrad Jace? It just seems a little interesting of their choice. Maybe a card like Jace Beleren might be a better choice, but I guess Unraveler of Secrets, maybe it relates to what he does in the story. It just feels very weird to take another set's Planeswalker and throw it into a different set and different plane, even. I guess Unraveler of Secrets is very generic. It just, I think the Planeswalkers may have been a slight misstep. It does, I mean, yes, Jace was there on Amonkhet. Cool, but I don't know, not a huge fan. We have Pact of Negation, 0-cost instant, counter target spell. At the beginning of your next upkeep, pay 5. If you don't, you lose the game. This one I think is completely fine. Also, Wrath of God, for similar reasons. These were both, and I believe even Rest of Peace was an invocation, and so I think it makes a lot of sense to have the invocations. If they're worthy of being an invocation on Amonkhet, then they definitely fit the lore of Amonkhet. Whether this is too powerful, I don't think so. I think this is actually quite not casual card, like, yeah, it's different, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't know how much play this is really going to see. 5 mana, that's a lot. Maybe throw it in a combo deck, you're going to protect your combo because you're about to win, but it may also be a sideboard card. There may be some jank you can do with it too, so it'll be interesting to see where this card lands. It is one of those weird utility cards, and so far, we haven't seen any card that would really define a deck. We haven't seen, like, the Winota of this. So let's see what else they have. We also have Demonic Pact. It's a 4-cost black enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't already been chosen. It deals 4 damage to any target, and you gain 4 life. Target opponent discards 2 cards, you draw 2 cards, you lose the game. So for 4, you can kind of generate a lot of value, but after 4 turns, you die. And I think this actually has a lot of interesting applications. This is one of the first cards that I don't think just gets thrown into a deck. Like Wrath of God, you could throw into a lot of just random white decks. This, you need to be built around it. I do think it can be thrown in a meta deck, or a slightly meta deck, with the, Esper, Doom Foretold. This is something you can generate 3 things of value from it and then sack it, and then you don't really care, and maybe you run Dance of the Manse in there, and then you bring it back, get more value, and sack it again. And so you are getting a lot of value for very little mana, and you're mitigating the downside. I could also see this being thrown into a gimmicky kind of a role reversal deck where you get all 3 of those and then give your opponent access to it, and then they instantly lose the game. I could see that being run alongside something like 9 Lives, because that already likes to role reversal enchantments, and, Solemnity and all that, maybe in one deck as a weird combo deck. I don't know. I just think that it's a very fun little card that I don't think will be very meta. I think it could see play in maybe a Doom Foretold deck, but that's about it. Next, we have Thoughtseize. This is 1 black for sorcery, and target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. You lose 2 life. So there's already a deck in Historic all about making your opponent discard. I don't know really how powerful it is, but I think this will definitely be an upgrade to it. Think about every time you've been thought erasured, now do that turn 1. And I guess it's not that big of a deal, but now turn 1, Thoughtseize, turn 2, I don't know, some annoying spell rather than wasting it on thought erasure or something along that line. It is also, this is just one of the best hand disruption spells in the game, and so seeing it in Historic is going to be, interesting. I think this may be the card that is going to be one of the more impactful ones on the meta. I think Demonic Pact might see some play in a Doom Foretold, or maybe even a janky deck, and janky decks. All the other cards are kind of just nice utility pieces, and I guess this one is a utility piece, but I just think it'll be the most impactful. Next, we have Anger of the Gods. 3 cost red and sorcery. Anger of the God deals 3 damage to each creature. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile instead. Okay, I thought about this card a little bit more, and I'm thinking to myself, why? Okay, I think there are better cards. For instance, in Amonkhet Remastered, there's a card that for 3, you can deal 3 damage to each creature, but it has cycling. And tell me, which one would you rather have? Okay, yes, there are those cases where if, a creature was dealt damage this way would die, exile instead, is very relevant. But with Cauldron Familiar gone, this doesn't kill Uro. Yes, you can maybe swing, get Uro to take some damage, then do this. But that's a little, meh. How often is there a creature that you need to exile right now in the meta? And yeah, if it was, Rakdos Sacrifice is kind of a big deal, but like Goblins doesn't really care if it exiles everything, and even if you are, and they do care, they can just sack everything with Skirk Prospector. I just don't, Elves don't really care if you exile them compared to, just killing them. So most of the, what I would call big decks right now in Historic don't really care about you exiling their cards. And so the ability, think about what happens more. Do you need to exile a creature, or, and not just exile a creature, exile, not because indestructible, but a creature still needs to be able to die. Do you need to exile a creature that can just die to a kill spell, or do you have your opponent have no creatures on board? Like, let's think about it. Have you ever run into a person who just doesn't run creatures in their deck? That happens a decent amount. Or maybe it's not worth it to, board wipe. Maybe you'll be affected too much to board wipe. So then you can just cycle it away. And so I think that, this is actually a weird choice because I think there are better versions of this in the meta right now. I guess it's better than Flame Sweep, but Flame Sweep's an instant. So it does 1 less damage, but it's an instant and is less red intensive. So, I think that this is a weird choice because I think there are better options. Yeah, I'm looking through. I guess the one advantage here is maybe Azorius auras, because if you can kill them while they're weak, you can exile it and get around no, you can't even get around indestructible. I don't know, you can get around hexproof, but then they're just going to give it indestructible. So yeah, this really I don't feel like is going to see any play. I could be wrong, though. Chandra, Pyromancer, 4-cost red, 4 loyalty, legendary Planeswalker Chandra, +1, it deals 1 damage to target player or Planeswalker, and 1 damage to up to 1 creature that you dealt damage to, or the Planeswalker's controller controls, and then the creature you dealt damage to can't block. Very confusing. Not confusing, but just it's a very long ability. And then you can put 0, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn, so it kind of just 0, draw a card for the turn. And then -7, exile the top 10 cards of your library, choose an instant or sorcery, exile this way, copy it, yeah. So the point is, again, it feels kind of weird to have, Chandra out of her element. Now, this is art that's already existed. This was her arch enemy Nico Bolas art. And I think, okay, fine, this one may be, this card already kind of existed in this flavor, so I think that might be fine. But again, what is this card really going to do in the meta? I don't really see it doing much. Yeah, it just feels kind of out of place. Maybe not out of place as much as Jace did, but this one just doesn't, say to me, oh, this is going to change the game, or change the meta. Next we have Collected Company. 4-cost, green instant. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. Put 2 creature cards with CMC 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, this card is insane. First off, it's an instant, which I think is one of its biggest problems, but I think this is definitely going to be an elf ball kind of deck. You're just going to basically pay for, get 2 amazing elves right on the battlefield as a combat trick even, because there are lots of elves that boost other elves. So yeah, I think that this will definitely go in elves and may even impact the format beyond that. I think this and Thoughtseize is so far probably the 2 most impactful cards in my opinion. And if you want to know all about the impactful cards of Amonkhet, on Friday I'm doing a video where I talk about, in my opinion, what are the most impactful cards from Amonkhet Remastered. So Thursday, cards missing. Friday, most impactful cards. This is a busy week. Also, by the way, tomorrow, that being the 13th, Amonkhet Remastered is being released, so keep that in mind. Next we have Hornet Queen, 7-cost green creature, insect 2/2, flying death touch. When it enters the battlefield, create 4/1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. So Lots of value, you're going to go wide really quickly, and it's with Death Touchers, which is devastating. Again, I don't know how much play this is going to see, but I could see it being in a Reanimator deck. Just 7 mana is a lot right now. It is in green, which isn't that hard to do, so maybe it is a sideboard card against creature swarm decks in like a Simic ramp deck that you want to like, oh, I want to be able to get a lot of creatures out, so maybe this goes in there, but outside of that, I don't really know where this has a home. And then we have Perilous Vault, 4-cost artifact. You can pay 5, tap, exile it to exile all non-land permanents. Okay, yes, exile all non-land permanents. That's a powerful ability, but at this point you've paid 9 mana to do a symmetrical board wipe. That is just going to exile everything, and at this point your opponent probably sees it coming. So I'm not a huge fan of this card. I don't want to play it. I don't want to play against it. I wish they would have picked something better. And then next they have Sphinx's Revelation, X, white, blue, blue. For an instant, you gain X life and draw X cards. I think we all know where this is going. This is probably going in a Bant ramp deck. You're going to ramp a ton. You're going to be able to just... It's a new explosion, expansion explosion. But this time you don't need to pay blue, blue, red, red. You just play blue, blue, white. And yes, you don't get to do the damage, so it's not as, great, but it is going to gain you life and draw you cards, which I think having more explosions in the game isn't really what we need. Just that drawing cards is crazy. It's also an instant, just like Explosion. Luckily, Wilderness Reclamation is gone, otherwise this would have been problematic with it, but yeah, that's crazy. So those are all the cards that were not originally in Amonkhet or Hour of Devastation that are now there in Amonkhet Remastered. First off, I want to know what you guys think of those cards specifically being in Historic, but I also want to know what you guys think about them adding other cards to remasters, and also just your general thoughts on remasters. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.